Hey guys, welcome to Jitters. Today we're going to dive deep into an amazing Reddit story written by Dopabeane. It's a bit paranormal, scary, and emotional too. Trust me, you're going to love it. Now without further ado, let's jump into some paranormal Reddit stories. HIPAA, my new patient is literally a saint. In August 1977, emergency personnel were dispatched to an undisclosed psychiatric institution for intellectually and developmentally impaired adults. Upon arrival, they discovered 4 deceased staff who appeared to have been picked into pieces. Small amounts of flesh, muscle, and parts such as eyelids, eyes, ears, fingers, and toes had been pinched away. At autopsy, it was determined that approximately 20%, 35% of the victim's body mass had been removed in this manner. Despite an extensive search, the missing body mass was never located. Residents of the institution appeared unaware of the deaths, only providing statements regarding Larry's guardian angel. Upon request, they led investigators to a 21-year-old man who introduced himself as Larry. Larry said he had no idea what happened at the institution except lots of fixing. Investigators soon uncovered evidence of systemic abuse against residents past and present, including multiple fatalities. The dead staff members appeared to be the worst perpetrators. Under the circumstances, the facility was shuttered. The residents were transferred out to other facilities. The murders remain unsolved. Approximately 6 months later, a similar incident occurred at the facility where Larry now lived. In fact, similar incidents have occurred at every facility in which has Larry lived for the past 48 years. Each facility experienced at least 2 freak accidents of staff who then had a substantial portion of body mass picked away. Between 1977 and 2025, over 150 such deaths occurred in facilities where Larry lived. In January 2025, Larry came to the attention of V-Class agent Gabriella W. Shortly thereafter, he was transferred to the custody of the Agency of Helping Hands. Larry is a 69-year-old Caucasian male, although he appears to be 20-25 years of age. He is 5'3" tall, with light blonde hair and brown eyes. His physical appearance is consistent with trisomy 21. Larry has mild to moderate intellectual disability. He possesses a sophisticated vocabulary and excellent manual dexterity. He has demonstrated the ability to carry out simple to moderately complex tasks. Larry carries a blue plastic toolbox everywhere. When he opens the toolbox, a variety of items can be seen, including needles, thread, hand tools, and large white feathers, as well as various body parts such as hair, eyes, ears, fingernails, and patches of skin. It should be noted that each item appears infused with a faint glow. When anyone else opens the toolbox, it appears empty. No one except Larry can remove anything from the toolbox. Larry can spontaneously heal physical injuries by using body parts within his toolbox as patches. Based on his interview, he also appears capable of reversing death by virtue of utilizing human biological matter. When asked who taught him this skill, he replied, "Nameless." Containment of the entity Nameless is now a high priority. Additionally, Larry senses psychological, mental, and emotional distress via a synesthesia response. He perceives negative emotional states as cracks, lines, crevices, and fissures in the skin of the person he is viewing. As Larry describes it, he can see when people are falling apart. Per evaluations, his synesthesia response does not differentiate between temporary or chronic distress. Larry can fix these afflictions on a temporary or semi-permanent basis by filling them. Larry uses various materials, but the best results come from use of his own hair. He told evaluators that, "My hair is the best tool I've got." Larry has been observed to braid, knot, and twist locks of his own hair before placing them inside a fissure. While no one but Larry can see these fissures, witnesses agree that the pieces of hair he uses disappear from view once he releases them. Larry's abilities bear similarities to Inmate 24, Ward 1, Mrs. Stitcher. Unlike Mrs. Stitcher, he only applies his abilities to people he believes are, in his words, broken. Even then, he only provides aid to a specific subset of broken individuals. He will and has victimized so-called broken people that he views as victimizers in order to benefit broken people who are victims. While Larry's internal value system may render him functionally useless to many agency staff, he may be a valuable asset to the mental and emotional well-being of his fellow inmates. It should be noted that immediately following this interview, the inmate inflicted substantial injury upon Rachel B. That's me. A full account of the circumstances of her injury follow the interview. Interview subject: the patron saint of broken things. Classification string: cooperative, indestructible, under investigation, constant, low, dinos. Interviewer: Rachel B. and Christoph W. Interview date: 22 January 2025. People told my mom to get rid of me because I was born broken. That always hurt my feelings. My mom would tell me, "You're not broken, Larry, not a bit. You're a fixer. I was broken before you were born, but you fixed me. Don't listen to a word they say." But it was hard not to listen when they said things like, "Broken mother, broken son," and "He ruined your life," and "You're lucky we don't put you out in the street," and "Why don't you put him in an institution? That's where people like him belong." They always talked like I wasn't there. Maybe they didn't notice me, or maybe they just thought I was too stupid to understand. I wasn't too stupid, but I was broken. I was broken and slow and different. I couldn't go to school. Even when I got old, I couldn't read or write well, and no matter what she said, Mom was broken too. Her skin was always covered in big spidery lines like her old porcelain doll. When she was really sad or mad, the lines cracked open and bled shadows. No one else saw it. It took me a long time to figure that out because I'm not smart. The lines were real. They were a sickness, but it was a sickness only I could see. Sometimes the cracks went away when I was a good boy who did my chores and gave her big hugs and fixed things for her, but only sometimes. I was good at fixing things. I had lots of tools, plus needles and thread and buttons and fishing line and rope. Mom got me a toolbox to put it all in. I took it everywhere so I could fix whatever needed fixing. Mom always smiled when I fixed stuff. "You're a fixer, Larry. The best fixer, just like I always say." But she was wrong. I found lots of things I couldn't fix, like the bumblebee with no wings. I couldn't fix that bumblebee, so I put him in my grandma's old fish bowl and fed him sugar water and let him crawl all over my arms. I pretended he could talk in a teeny fuzzy voice. That's silly. But when Mom saw me being silly with my bumblebee, all the cracks in her skin got so small, they almost disappeared. Nobody but Mom liked me when I was silly. My cousin Rob hated me when I was silly. Actually, he hated me all the time. He punched me once right in the face and broke my front tooth. It fell out and landed on my bed. It hurt so bad. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how stupid I looked. How my smile looked broken. How I looked broken. My bumblebee crawled out of his fishbowl and onto my hand, like he was telling me everything would be okay. I could even hear him say it in his teeny, fuzzy voice. "Everything will be okay." Then he crawled onto my broken tooth. I picked it up so carefully so he wouldn't fall off, cupping him in my hand just like this. When he saw me, when I opened my hand again, my broken tooth was gone. And my bumblebee had wings. That's the first time a piece of me fixed a broken thing. I let my bumblebee fly out the window. He looked so happy. He remembered me. He even came back to visit before I got kicked out of that house. I miss him. We got kicked out because Grandma told Mom to send me to an institution for everyone's safety, she said, even though I never hit anyone or get out. We got out. Mom got so sad. The cracks in her skin got so big. I got sad too. Our new house was scary. The neighbors were mean and there was a horrible scratch under the floor at night. Sometimes I thought I heard a teeny fuzzy voice asking for help. But that wasn't real. Some of the things Mom said things weren't real either. Once she said, "I used to sing to you when we were both stars. We were so far away from each other in the dark, but you could still hear me. I used to dream of the day I'd be close enough to sing in your ear. Now that day is here, but I've forgotten how to sing." She said things that were real though. Mean things like, "You ruined my life," and You really are broken, Larry. You broke me too. We're both broken now. That made me cry. Then she'd say, don't cry, Larry. I didn't mean it. I love you. You're a fixer. Don't listen to a word I say. But it was hard not to listen. It was hard not to see the lines in her skin turning into bigger, broken cracks. I thought about my bumblebee a lot, how one little tooth made his wings grow back. I wondered if knocking all my teeth out would fix my mom, only I was too scared to knock my teeth out. The only times her cracks got small was when we went to church. I love church. I love Jesus. The priest said Jesus was the great healer. Mom said healer is a fancy word for fixer. Just like you, Larry, you're a fixer too. At church, I would look up and see the gash in Jesus' side. I wanted to fix it for him like I fixed my bumblebee. Not because Jesus needed my help, but because I wanted to do something for him. Only I would never be good enough to do anything for Jesus. I couldn't even do anything for Mom. Except for at church, she got sadder and meaner. Her broken lines split open and bled darkness. I tried to fix her with pieces of me. I was too scared to knock out my teeth, so I used my hair instead. I used to put it on her cracked skin when I hugged her. Sometimes it made the cracks better for a little bit. I tried using my tools too. I tapped her gently with the hammer and put the wrench on her fingers. Sometimes. I buried my face in her hair. She buried her face in my hair. I told her I was fixing her. That made her laugh and say. When she laughed, the lines in her skin shrank again. But only for a little bit, so I started hugging her and wrapping her in blankets and making her tea and petting her hair like she pet mine when I was sick. It worked sometimes, but only for a little bit. No matter how many pieces of me I used, no matter how many things I fixed with the tools in my toolbox, no matter how many times I pet her hair or wrapped her in blankets or made her tea or hugged her, she got more and more broken. That meant I wasn't a fixer anymore. I was just broken, a broken fixer. That made her cry. It's not your fault, Larry, she said, though if it wasn't for you, I'd have fallen apart forever ago. You're a good fixer, the best fixer who ever lived. I'm just too broken to be fixed anymore. That night, she fell apart all the way. She went to a funeral home and I went to an institution with nothing but my toolbox. On my very first day, they took it away. That made me cry. They hit me for crying. That made me cry more. No one had ever hit me except my cousins. And not like this. These people hit me so hard I couldn't open my eye. They took me to a tiny room with bars on the window and locked me in. I cried and prayed to God for help. He didn't help me. Not that day or the next day. Not when I got hit again, or when they took my food away for crying too much. Not when the other patients pushed me, or when one single patient screamed so loud for so long the workers locked us all in our rooms without supper. I still prayed. One night I prayed until moon got so high it spilled light through the bars on my window. That's when I heard a funny sound. A noisy scratch from the vent, like a rat. I wasn't scared of rats. I used to feed them in my old house. They were my friends. I wanted more rat friends. So I got out of bed and crawled to the vent. Inside, I saw a face. It had no eyes, just big empty wet sockets. Its skin was all cracked apart just like my mom's. It started whispering without words, just babbling, like it forgot how to talk. That made me think of what my mom said about forgetting how to sing. Then it opened its mouth and I saw it had no tongue. That reminded me of my mom too. That's why I didn't move when it stretched its long, skinny fingers through the grate, or when it wrapped those fingers in my hair just like my mom used to. It tightened its hand like a trap and yanked my hair out and shoved it into its mouth. Then it whipped around and crawled away. I crawled back into bed, crying and missing my mom. I cried so loud, a worker came by and told me to shut up. I dreamed about my bumblebee. He flew out my window. I tried to follow, but I was too big to squeeze through the bars. When I gave up and turned around, I saw the scary face in the vent. I woke up crying. The worker told me to shut up again. That was Mr. Carl. He was mean, but not the meanest. The meanest was Mr. Paul. All the residents were scared of Mr. Paul. Some of the workers were nice, like Mrs. Mary. She brought me snacks sometimes and gave me medicine cream when Mr. Paul hit me so hard I bled. That happened a lot because Mr. Paul liked to hit us, Even though it was hard, I got used to living at the institution, and I got to know all the other patients. I don't even know why some of them were there. Lots were normal and smart, not slow and strange like me, like Roger. Roger was handsome and funny, but they put him here for living with a man. Carrie was a genius and used to be a nurse, but they put her there just having a baby without being married. My mom had me without being married. And then there was Franklin. He sometimes talked to people who weren't there, but he talked to people who were there too, and he was a good teacher. He taught me how to read. "Why are you even here, Franklin?" I asked. "Because people want to forget me," he said. "They want to forget you too. This is where they send people they want to forget." That made me cry. I don't want to be forgotten. No one should get forgotten just for being different. And we were all different there. Some of the patients were so different, they couldn't talk or see or even move. Some of them didn't even know their names. I don't think the workers did either. But most of the patients were in between, people like Franklin and people who didn't know their names. Some used to have regular lives before they came to the institute. But lots and lots of them had been in the institution their whole lives. Some even got sent here when they were born. They never got held by their moms or made friends with bumblebees or learned to fix broken things. The only thing they had in common was they were all broken. They were full of lines and cracks that bled darkness. Some had cracks even bigger than my mom's, and no one was even trying to fix them. So even though I didn't want to be there, even though I was scared, even though Mr. Paul hit me, and even though I didn't always get to eat, and even though the pills the workers gave me made me sick, I decided it was time to be a fixer again. I didn't have my toolbox anymore, so I used hugs and hair pets. Sometimes I covered the residents up with the blankets in the day room and told them stories. I couldn't fix everyone, but I fixed a lot of people a little, and a few people a lot. Their names were William and Nedra and Edith and Eleanor. Eleanor was my favorite. She was going to have a baby right there in the institution. I thought that was wonderful, but the staff told her she was dirty and disgusting. It always made the lines in her skin get so big and dark. I told her, "Don't listen to a word they say. Your baby is wonderful and so are you. You're a good boy, Larry," she said. "I hope my baby is like you." No one had ever said anything so nice. It made me so warm and happy, I couldn't even sleep. I was still awake that night, smiling, when I heard a scratch in the vent. I sat up. It was the monster with his cracked skin and empty wet eye sockets and no tongue. Except he had a tongue now. "Look!" He stuck his tongue out. It was a funny tongue, long and flat, and the exact same gold color as my hair. "You did this. My tongue was broken, but you fixed it. I need more fixing." "No, I don't want to help you. You hurt me when I helped you before." He wrapped his long, rotten fingers around the grate. I bless you, but I'm broken. I need fixing. You're the fixer. Help me. If you help me, I'll make you strong enough to break out of here and break everyone who stands in your way. But only if you fix me." I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to be remembered, not forgotten. I wanted to go back home with Mom, but Mom was gone. I didn't have a home anymore. I just had the institution, and William, and Nedra, and Edith, and Eleanor. Oh. Besides, I wasn't a breaker. I was a fixer, and lots of people in that institution needed fixing. "No," I said. The monster screamed terrible names and shook the grate. He made so much noise that Mr. Paul came and hit me until I couldn't even lay on my back. When he was gone, I cried and wished for Miss Mary to come help me, but I knew she wouldn't. Miss Mary didn't work nights. The grate scraped open, and the monster crawled out. I got scared, even more scared than of Mr. Paul. He was so much bigger than I thought, and he had wings, big, broken, dirty wings that dragged on the ground. But instead of hurting me, he pet my hair like I used to pet Mom's. Up close, his skin was cracked all over and covered in sores. Then he pulled out a broken feather and put it on my back, right on top of the place Mr. Paul hit hardest. That was his favorite place to hit. Then the monster patted my head and crawled back into the vent. I reached around to get that dirty old feather off my back, but it was gone. The next time Mr. Paul hit me in that same spot, it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt the next time he hit me there either. It hurt when he hit me in other places, but not there. And that was good because that's the place he hit most. That scary old monster had helped me. You're always supposed to thank people who help you. So I waited for his scratch to come back, only it never did. I figured the monster was ashamed of yelling. Mom always felt ashamed after she yelled at me. After 3 nights with no scratch, I crawled to the grate and tapped it. Something banged deep down in the vent. A minute later, his scary smile blinked on. Do you still need fixing? I asked. He nodded. Okay. I scratched at my hair with both hands. I didn't pull it because pulling hurt and I was tired of hurting until lots came falling out. Then I gathered it up and rolled it into a little fuzzy rope and poked it through the grate. The monster took it and put it inside one of his empty eye sockets. That made me feel pretty sick. It hurts when a tiny little eyelash gets into my eye. Seeing him put a whole bunch of hair inside made me shivery. But he didn't shiver. He just smiled bigger. Then he turned around and crawled away. I didn't see him again till after my next beating. They beat me for helping Eleanor. They were trying to take her away for shocks and she was scared, so I tried to protect her. They beat me and took her anyway. They hurt me so bad I was scared I'd never be able to move again. When the moon rose, I heard a scratch the grate. Next thing I knew, the monster was leaning over me. His skin was still cracked and full of sores, and his broken wings were filthy. But he had a shiny new eye the color of my hair. He pulled a feather from his wing and put it on my biggest bruise. Why can't you do that before they hit me? I asked. Because I can't fix what isn't broken. You can talk? I can now. Why couldn't you talk before? I forgot how until I met you. This made me frown. Are you an angel? No, I'm just broken. What's your name? I don't remember. How? I've been here too long. When you're in here, everyone forgets you, until you forget yourself too. He pulled out more feathers and put them on the sorest spots. This won't last long because the feathers are broken, but it'll help for a little while. Thank you, I said. After that, the monster came every night. Only, I stopped calling him a monster. People used to call me a monster. It's not nice. Since he didn't have a name and wouldn't let me pick one for him, I called him Nameless. The 10th time he visited, I scratched out more of my hair until I had enough to make a little twist. For your other eye, I said. He smiled and stuck it right in. Seeing that whole big tuft in his socket made me sick, but it was still a nice thing to do. And I promised to always nice Nameless because he was broken and I was a fixer. He made it hard to be nice though. He was really mean sometimes and it was easy to make him mad. He never even told me why he was mad. That reminded me of my mom. And after those mean things, he'd say exactly what my mom said. I'm sorry, don't listen to a word I say. You're not the broken one I am. But less broken now, thanks to you. One night I told him about my toolbox, how it was a present from my mom, and how I used it to fix things everywhere I went. Where is it? They stole it when I got here. They probably threw it away. That made Nameless cry. He usually got mad at me after he cried, but not that time. He always patched me up with his feathers. The feather patches only lasted a few days, just like he said, so I needed lots of them, and he needed lots of my hair. He used it to fix the cracks in his skin and the sores. He couldn't fix his wings though. Hair won't work for wings, he said. But will. Scary things. I liked seeing Nameless fixed, so I started pulling out my hair, even though it hurt. I gave him hair until I was almost bald. Some patients made fun of me, but most didn't. Soon I didn't have much hair left. That made me sad. Not about having no hair, but about not having enough to fix everyone. The cracks in her skin were so big I could see through her. I got so sad that Nameless noticed. What's wrong? I told him about Eleanor. I don't have enough to fix her. I don't have enough to fix anyone but you. And I love you, Nameless. But you're not the only one here who needs fixing. That's it? Why didn't you say so? I can help with that. Before I could say another word, he squirmed into the vent. He came back a little while later with a handful of hair. Where did you get this? I asked. Does it matter? Make a clump and tie it with one of your own hairs, he said. That's important. Just one strand, all the way around. How do you know? Because I knew someone like you once. I don't remember her name, but I remember what she did, and that's what she did. So I tied the hair together like a fishing lure and used one of my hairs, just like Nameless said. Next time I saw Eleanor in the day room, I pretended to pet her, just like a cat, Eleanor, because you're so pretty and nice, just like my mom's cat, and dropped it inside the biggest, darkest crack. And it turned to liquid gold before it vanished. The crack got bigger for a second, but then it shrank down. Larry, that was even better than a hug, Eleanor said. Thank you. After that, Nameless brought me more hair. So much. More than I could use. And I finally figured out where he was getting it because all the staff members were going bald. How do you do that? I asked. It hurt so bad when you pulled mine out. And that's because I forgot how to be gentle, he answered. You made me remember. Don't they see you? No. How? Because they forgot I exist. This made no sense, but a lot of things Nameless said made no sense. Then again, he was locked up in the institute too. Most of us patients said things that made no sense. Why would he be any different? Besides, I had bigger problems. The staff decided their hair loss was because of fungus, and they blamed me because I lost my hair first. I got scrubbed with burning water and special soap that made my skin bleed. They called me filthy and disgusting and shaved all my hair off. Hair was the only tool I had. Without it, I couldn't fix anyone, not even Nameless. I was so scared Nameless would be mad, but all he said was, "That's all right. Who is your favorite patient here?" You! I don't count. Who else? Eleanor, come with me. He made me crawl into the vent with him. It was tiny. I don't even know how Nameless fit. No wonder all his feathers were broken. The vent was crushing them. We crawled for a long time. Finally, he stopped at a grate. You first, he said. I'll just scare her. Tell her you need help. This time I was the one scratching. I pushed the grate open and crawled out. In the bed was Eleanor. Larry, she said, what's wrong? I got so flustered I didn't even know what to say. Nameless came to my rescue. Eleanor's eyes got so big when she saw him. So big and scared. The boy is special, said Nameless. You know this, don't you? The embodiment of peace be with you. I see wings, Larry, Eleanor said to me. Does he have wings? Yes. She looked at me, then back at him. She was breathing hard. I was scared she'd scream, but she didn't. It took a long time, but Nameless talked her into sitting on his lap like a little girl. I don't know how he did it, maybe because he didn't look so scary anymore now that he had eyes. Then he brushed her hair with his fingers. He was gentle. He was so gentle she fell asleep. When he was done, he put her back in bed and covered her. Then he showed me his hands. Pieces of Eleanor's hair were laced across his fingers. It looked so pretty, like a net. Bless them, he said. How? However you want. So I blessed the strands how I wanted and placed them right over Eleanor's heart. They shimmered like they were made of stars. Then they melted into her, filling in the breaks in her skin like molten silver. Every night after that, Nameless took me through the vents to the cell of a different patient. Most weren't scared, especially once they saw Nameless. They all thought he was an angel, even Franklin and Roger. Nameless held them like children and ran his hands through their hair so gently they fell asleep. At the end, he always had a lacy net of hair around his hands. I blessed it, then used half of it for Nameless because he needed so much fixing. I used the rest to help fix the patients. And it worked. The breaks in their skin got so small you couldn't even see them, and they mostly stayed gone. Sometimes the breaks came back, especially after a patient got hurt by Mr. Paul, or when they had to go see the doctors for shocks. But we always fixed them again. We fixed some of them so good they got to go home. Franklin and Nedra were two who got to go home again. That's what Mrs. Mary said. They got discharged to their families. Isn't that wonderful? It was wonderful even though I missed them. The only person we couldn't fix was Eleanor. The breaks in her skin never went away, no matter how much Nameless brushed her hair. He started calling her breaks crevasses. She turned into his favorite, just like she was mine. She reminded me of Mom. I don't know who she reminded Nameless of, but I think he loved her more than I did. We worked so hard to fill her in, but no matter what, she just kept breaking apart. One night she wasn't in her cell anymore. Nameless was angry. I was just sad. But Nameless made my life hard when he was angry. I didn't want him to be angry anymore, so I asked Mrs. Mary. Her family came for her, she said. Her and her new baby. This made me happy, even though it made me sad. I loved Eleanor so much, but Nameless didn't believe it. That's a lie. She's here. We're going to find her. That night, we searched all the cells. Then we searched the basement last. And that's where she was. In the basement, on a table, under a sheet, and all black and blue and dead. And she wasn't the only one. I saw Nedra and Franklin too, and one of the patients who couldn't talk, and two who had never lived anywhere but the institution their whole lives. They were all black and blue, with bloody faces. Franklin's face was so bloody I only recognized him because of his hair. That's when I knew no one ever went home. I was so stupid to believe that. Who would take us home? They sent us to the institution to forget us. No one ever came back for people they wanted to forget. Nameless picked up Eleanor and rocked her. For once, he was sad and I was angry. I was so angry that I didn't want to fix anything. For the first time ever, I wanted to break everything. I tried, but I just got in trouble, the biggest trouble. Mr. Paul and Mr. Carl hurt me until I couldn't move. Until I felt dead. I wasn't scared though. Except for the hurting, it wasn't so bad. The moon coming through the bars was so beautiful. The bars didn't even look like bars. They looked like columns, wide and beautiful, in front of the door to heaven. The stars in the sky were singing, so soft and quiet, in teeny fuzzy voices. They made me smile. Then something screamed so loud the stars stopped. Nameless. Nameless, trying to wake me up. But I was too hurt to wake up, and I was too tired. That didn't stop Nameless. He brought all kinds of things to me. He brought hair. So much hair. But so much more. He brought bloody teeth and eyes and pieces of meat. Only meat isn't supposed to have hair, and eyes aren't supposed to be outside your head. Eyes have tails, did you know that? I didn't know. That's creepy. I wonder if that's why eyelashes hurt when they get in your eyes, because they poke the tails. Nameless tried to put the hair and the skin and the taily eyes on me, just like I used to put hair on him, but it didn't work. I loved him so much for trying though. Looking at him made me feel happy, like when I looked at my mom. But keeping my eyes open hurt, so I closed them. Nameless screamed again. I was scared someone would come running and hurt me more, but no one did. I wondered if that was because I was dreaming, or maybe I was already dead. I didn't want to be dead because I was hurting, but I couldn't be dead if I was hurting. Heaven couldn't hurt, and Nameless wouldn't be crying if we were in heaven. No one is sad in heaven, especially not angels. And Nameless went away again. I know because it got quiet. The stars started to sing again in their teeny fuzzy voices. I smiled and flew away. I flew through the bars on the window that weren't bars anymore, but shining columns leading to heaven, and up into the sky with all the stars. They were singing in my mama's voice. I reached for the closest one, and then I slammed backward, screaming. I was back in bed, back in my cell, and Nameless was leaning over me with my old toolbox, and he had the big old needle I kept in there. He was sewing me shut with my old fishing line. Somehow he fixed me right up. I don't know how. I guess it was a miracle. Angels do miracles. No matter what he says, Nameless is an angel. When I sat up, all fixed and happy, Nameless hugged me. When we were done hugging, I used the rest of those pieces, including the eyes with the tails and the skin with all that hair on it and the ears and fingers, to fix Nameless up for good. That's what his wings needed. Body parts and blood and skin and eyes. When I was done fixing him, he wasn't skinny anymore. No bones sticking out of his skin, no bruises, and his wings were glory. That's the only word I could think of, glory. The toolbox was empty, so Nameless went to fill it up again. He brought back a big old set of keys with the full toolbox. Oh. Together, we unlocked all the doors and led all the patients into the day room. We fixed them all up. Nameless had to refill the toolbox at least 10 times. When everyone was fixed, we went down to the basement. To Eleanor. Together, we fixed her. It took everything in my toolbox, and Nameless still had to cut himself and put his own blood in her mouth. But in the end, she woke up too. We did the same for Franklin and Nedra and the patient who couldn't talk and the patients who had never lived anywhere but the institution. Everyone was so happy to see them back that Nameless pulled his feathers, his glorious new whole feathers, and gave one to each and every patient. And I knew, because the feathers were finally clean and whole, because Nameless wasn't broken anymore, that those feathers would protect them forever. When day shift came in, I thought they'd be happy to see us all fixed, Mrs. Mary especially, but they were all just scared. Mrs. Mary was the most scared. That made me sad. The police came because of the dead bodies. None of us got in trouble. They just moved us all to a different institution. It wasn't much better there. They took my toolbox, but Nameless came with me and he got it back the very first night. We got to fixing straight away. I can fix you too if you want. You can say no. Not everyone has to be fixed. It's okay to be broken. You're so broken you don't even have cracks anymore. You covered them up with scales. I can see the scales in you just like I can see the breaks in other people. They're old and really hard. They're growing everywhere. They're covering your eyes and your helping hands and your heart. They need to come off. They need to fall away. Let me have them. They'll fix so many broken things. It won't even hurt when they come off, I promise. He lied, it hurt. Like someone tore off the biggest, heaviest, deepest full body callus that had ever been, only they ripped it off the inside instead of the outside. And it's like the callus was hiding a massive abscess that exploded. Only instead of infection, the abscess was filled with emotion. And that was way worse. Through the pain haze, I saw Larry pouring handfuls of old, tarnished scales into his toolbox. They cascaded over chunks of flesh, fingers, ears, and sure enough, eyes curled atop their coiled optic nerves. They pulled me from the interview room, asking what was wrong. To my shock, I answered, "Nothing's wrong, everything's actually right, but it's horrible and I hate it." And it was true. Despite the crippling, raw agony firing across every internal surface, I felt free and right. I wish I could explain it properly, but there's really no way to explain that the world has returned to a state of rightness you have forgotten, or perhaps never even known, because of the invisible wildfire scorching both your physical and metaphysical insides to cinders. Anyway, the events that followed are too painful to relate due to being exquisitely embarrassing, but within about 3 minutes, I discovered that a side effect of this internal defense-destroying firestorm was an inability to lie. If someone asked a question, I not only answered honestly, but spilled out any related tangents, all of which were brutally honest and kind of shocking even to myself. They eventually took me to medical, who immediately threw up their hands and sent me over to research and development. Bless Christoph, he went with me. It wasn't terrible. They monitored me and ran a few tests. Their biggest concern seemed to be whether my own abilities were intact, which they were. If anything, my ability to compel speech was stronger than ever. Once they established that, they basically ignored me. Once it became clear that I was not going to die, Christoph instigated a game of truth or dare, only it was really just truth or truth, because all the dares consisted of, "I dare you to answer this question truthfully," and he would not stop. I have to admit, being compelled to speak the whole truth is the most mortifying thing I've ever experienced. I'm starting to hate myself on the other inmates' behalf. R&D released me once the pain subsided. Even then, I still could not lie. I couldn't even withhold information, especially if someone asked me a direct question. Christoph kept asking direct questions, all the way back to quarters, at my door, then asked, "Are you very sure you want to be all alone right now?" Unfortunately, the answer was no, but I shut my door before I had to endure his response. That turned out to be a mistake, because the second I turned around, the Harlequin crawled out from under my bed yet again. I recoiled. He looked less human than I've ever seen him, not only monstrous but otherworldly, like something from another plane entirely, wearing a poorly fitted skin suit. "I know what mind you're in," he said. "It's the mind you've always been in. You just covered it up with all the other minds. You want to be a helping hand, but not to me. I know that now. Not unless I make you. I will find a way to make you." And with that, he spidered back under the bed and vanished. I haven't seen him since. I wish he'd come back to explain himself, because Now that the side effects from the Larry interview have died down, I feel normal and just as confused as ever. Don't get me wrong, I'm really scared. I'm terrified of whatever he's going to do to make me help. But I also kind of miss getting along with him. I guess I've been here too long,